Disgust happens before you have even finished the thought. The face tightens, the stomach pulls, your body leans away from it. Before your mind even has gathered all of the evidence, your nervous system has already delivered the verdict. Get that thing away from me. You ever been there? See, that reaction has kept human beings alive. What am I talking about? Spoiled food, contaminated water, infected wounds, all of those things that could harm us if we actually allowed them to get inside of us. But disgust created distance before the danger got close enough to do any damage. But somewhere along the way, disgust, the meaning got changed. We started feeling it towards people, towards our bodies, towards our beliefs or other people's beliefs, towards perceived weakness, towards addiction or an addict, towards the part of somebody else's story we decided makes them unacceptable. Sometimes even towards the person staring us back in the mirror. See, rotten food can make you sick, absolutely. But what happens when your mind decides that a human being is rotten? This is Between Sessions with Markus, and we're still working our way through the Feelings Wheel series, slowing down just long enough to understand what is underneath the emotions we think we already know. So today, we're talking about disgust. And disgust has more than one name, too. See, around it, we find the words like dislike, contempt, judgmental, ridicule, even envy. And the purpose of the feelings wheel is not to give us just simply more vocabulary words. No, it's to make it harder for us to hide behind the first word that we can think of that makes us feel comfortable. Because I can say, I don't like them. It may be 100% true, but is it the whole truth? See, disgust is a distancing emotion. What do I mean? It says that I don't want this thing inside of me, so get it away. I don't want this thing near me. I don't want this thing to be associated with me. And sometimes that message is accurate, 100% of times. Sometimes people are abusive. Sometimes situations are unsafe. Some behavior violates our values, our boundaries, our dignity. And our reaction is telling us to get distance from something that is genuinely harmful. And if that's the case, listen to it, please. Because disgust can also be data, but data is not the same thing as the final verdict. See, disgust will tell you that something inside wants distance, but it can't tell you by itself whether you're reacting to something that's dangerous, something unfamiliar, something remembered, or even something unresolved. See, that takes a whole lot more honesty, because sometimes we recoil from what's wrong, and sometimes we recoil from what reminds us of something that we have not healed yet. Dislike is usually the cleaner version, right? I don't like them. I don't enjoy being around them. That doesn't work for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't think that's what I'm saying. No, you are not required to like everybody. You don't owe everybody access. You don't have to turn every difficult relationship that we get into some sort of spiritual assignment, right? Sometimes you just simply don't connect, and that's okay. But listen carefully to what comes after that thing, I don't like them. Are you naming a behavior, or are you attacking the person? Do you say, I don't like how they spoke to me? Or do you flip it? They're trash. They're disgusting. Maybe you say, that choice hurt people. Or do you turn it and say, that person is worthless? See, those are not the same statements. See, one identifies what happened. The other eliminates the humanity of the person who did that thing. See, dislike says, that is not for me. But contempt, it says, you are beneath me. that is where the temperature changes. Dislike creates distance. Contempt creates hierarchy. Contempt does not simply say, I disagree with you. No. It goes further. It says, I'm better than you. It looks down on the individual, or it rolls the eyes at that person. It sneers. It speaks about people as if they're too stupid, too weak, too dirty, too damaged, too far gone to deserve my understanding. And contempt is convenient, because once I place you beneath me, I no longer have to be curious about you anymore. Out of sight, out of mind. I don't have to ask what happened to you anymore. It doesn't matter to me. I don't have to consider what happened between us. I don't have to examine myself. I don't have to examine what your presence is stirring up inside of me. Why? Because I already have my answer. You're the problem. And if you're the problem, I'm above the problem. Case closed. That's my verdict. But contempt usually has a history. Sometimes I make you feel small because I remember what I felt like when somebody made me feel small. Sometimes I put you beneath me because I can't bear to remember when I felt beneath you. Sometimes superiority is not confidence. Sometimes it's humiliation that finally found somebody else to carry the weight. Doesn't excuse the cruelty. It may explain why cruelty can feel powerful. And for a moment, I am no longer the rejected one. I am no longer the ashamed one. I'm no longer the person begging to be chosen, heard, respected, or even believed. No, I get to reject you. Now I get to decide who belongs in this circle. See, contempt takes an old wound, gives it a new throne to sit on. But just because you sit higher doesn't mean you've healed. No, sometimes it only means you found somebody else to place underneath that pain. But contempt recruits judgment. Judgment takes feeling and builds the case. It gathers the evidence. It removes the context from the situation. It remembers every failure. It interprets everything in the least generous way possible. And once that verdict is secure, ridicule performs it for the entire audience. You give that look across the room, the joke in the group chat, the whisper at church, the passive-aggressive things that you say to other people, the story told at somebody else's expense, a comment left online because it feels safer to hide behind the keyboard. No, judgment writes the sentence. Ridicule invites people to watch the execution, and we rarely call it contempt. What do we call it? Honesty. We call it standards. We call it discernment. We call it just telling the truth. But truth does not require humiliation, does it? See, a boundary does not require hatred. Accountability does not require us to strip another person of all of their dignity either. Some of us were taught to make contempt even sound holy. We learned who was acceptable. We learned who was worldly, who was godly, who was dirty, who was a sinner, who was backslidden, who needed to pray through, who was broken, who was living in sin, who God was supposedly disappointed with this week. See, we confused rejection with righteousness. We believed that if we showed enough disgust towards the right people, it would prove something about how good we were. But if our righteousness requires another human being to become less human, something has gone wrong. Because disgust may identify what violates my values, but it doesn't get to decide who has value. Let me say that one more time. Disgust may identify what violates your values, but it can never decide who has value. Now we get to the word that almost nobody wants to claim: envy. Because sometimes the person who irritates us is not hurting anybody. They're simply free in a way that we're not. They can say whatever they want. They can take up this space. They rest without apologizing. They celebrate themselves. They set a boundary without writing a 5-page paragraph to explain that boundary. They let themselves be seen. And something about them gets under our skin, and we say they're arrogant. They're just seeking attention. They're selfish. They're self-centered. They got to be fake. They're too loud. Wish they would shut up. They're just too much. But what if they're not too much? And what if watching them exposes how little permission we were given to become ourselves? See, envy is not always wanting somebody else's possessions. Sometimes envy is just wanting their permission to rest, their permission to finally say no, their permission to enjoy their own life, their permission to be visible without having to perform the right to even exist. See, sometimes who do they think they are is covering a much more hurtful, painful question of who might I have been if I had believed I was allowed. Maybe you don't hate their confidence. Maybe you hate what you had to survive before you could find your own confidence. Maybe you don't hate their happiness. Maybe their happiness is standing too close to that grief of everything that you've missed. Maybe you do not hate their freedom. Maybe it makes you angry because freedom has always felt expensive to you. That's not an accusation. It's an invitation. Because if envy is underneath the disgust, then condemning them will never heal what was denied to you. You'll keep attacking in other people what is still waiting to be reclaimed inside of you. And nowhere does disgust become more dangerous than when it gets turned inwards. Recovery has a way of clearing the mental fog, but when the fog clears, the receipts are still there. The lies that we told, the money that we wasted, the promises that we did not keep, the calls that we ignored, the people that we scared, the people that we disappointed, the look in somebody's eyes when they wanted to believe what you were saying, but experience taught them not to. See, you and I remember what we did. We remember who got hurt. And disgust points towards the mirror. It says, I wasn't just drunk. I was disgusting. I didn't just cause damage. No, I am the damage. I'm damaged. I didn't just betray people. I am the betrayer. See, that may sound like accountability, but it's not. Call it what it is. It's self-contempt wearing accountability's clothes. See, accountability says, I did this. I can own this. I take responsibility for this, and I'm going to repair whatever I can. And I'll stop repeating what caused the damage. But self-contempt says, because I did this, I deserve nothing good. If people really knew me, they'd leave anyway. If God really sees me, he would probably be disgusted too. One leans towards responsibility. The other leads back into hiding. If I'm honest, hiding is where addiction learned how to breathe. Some of us keep punishing ourselves because punishment feels more honest than grace. Grace sometimes feels too easy. Forgiveness feels suspicious. A higher power sounds like another judge who already has evidence and is going to judge me, especially if somebody handed you a version of God who looked disgusted before you had even done anything wrong. So when recovery tells you to trust a higher power in the beginning of the steps, don't hear it like safety. You hear it as surveillance. You don't hear it as a relationship. No, you hear it as another work. You, me, they may not be rejecting God. They may simply be recoiling from the face somebody put on God. And that matters greatly, because you can't build trust while pretending betrayal never happened. You can't receive grace without believing grace is just another setup. But grace is not pretending the record doesn't exist. Grace refuses to make the record the entire person. Redemption does not require you to lie about the rubble. It simply means the rubble is not the whole story. Yeah, you did what you did. Yes, some people may never trust you again. Yes, some relationships may not return. Yes, some consequences may still linger. All of that can be true. And you can still become someone different. You can't make amends and secretly believe that your existence is offensive. You can't repair a life you believe should have been thrown away. Accountability names the behavior. Self-contempt sentences our entire identity. Recovery, though, asks you to tell the truth without carrying out your own execution. So when disgust shows up, don't immediately swallow it. Don't immediately obey it. Slow it down for a minute. Get curious and ask, what exactly am I even reacting to? Is this unsafe? Is this unfamiliar? Is it reminding me of something else? Is there hurt underneath this? Is there fear? Is there shame? Do I feel humiliation? Do I feel envy? What is the feeling tempting me to do with somebody else's dignity? And is the person I'm dehumanizing somebody else? Or is it myself? Your disgust may be protecting a real boundary. And if it is, honor it. Your disgust may be exposing an old wound. And if it is, listen to it. Your disgust may be covering envy, but tell the truth about it. Your disgust may be trying to turn accountability into self-hatred, but you can't let it. You can create distance without dehumanizing the person. You can set a boundary without contempt. You can condemn harmful behavior without deciding a human being no longer has worth. You can tell the truth about who you were without throwing away who you are becoming. Maybe the deepest question is not what disgusts me. Maybe the deeper question is closer to, what have I decided deserves no compassion, and why? Because whatever we decide is beneath compassion, we stop trying to understand. We stop looking for pain. We stop recognizing humanity. And when that contempt finally turns inward, we stop recognizing our own humanity. Disgust may tell you what needs distance. Let wisdom decide what happens next, though. Disgust may reveal what violates your values, but it doesn't get to decide who has the value. Not them, not the person you used to be, and certainly not you. I'm Markus. This is Presence Before Progress.